I'm happy that I can warmly welcome you all on behalf of Institute for Political Ecology in Zagreb, which is organizer of this event in cooperation with 𝙎𝙬𝙬 Foundation in Prague. We are beginning with this today with a mini series of the lectures and conversations, and we collected around 10 mainly European cities in which green or green left political platforms and parties are in power or were in power, in order to learn and share and exchange from different transformative practices that have been taking place in the course of last few years, with momentum, positive political momentum gained in Zagreb a few months ago, where a green left political platform 𝙎𝙬𝙬 has won the elections. We also see this as advantage to take this timing as a departure point to enter into deeper exchange between different cities, and that we also are able to learn from each other from different practices that were present or are present in various European cities where Greens have important role. Today we will discuss and talk about 3 cities, namely Brussels, Budapest, and Bologna. Maybe even Naples to some extent will be involved. And tomorrow and day after tomorrow, we will also continue with other few cities from different European countries, as it is announced in the event announcement. We will also record these discussions so that people who were not able to attend this event are able to do it later. And timing of this event is in these afternoon hours, specifically that people who are working in the first half of the day can more easily attend these sessions. So without further ado, I would like to briefly announce our first guest speaker, Evelyn Herterbrook from the Brussels. Evelyn is also co-chair of the European Green Party, but also has very rich and extensive experience from governing the Brussels on behalf of the Greens, as she was part of the Green city government of Brussels during many years. So without further ado, I would like to invite you, Evelyn, to start with your lecture. We will, after each of these lectures, we will have some time for conversation, for questions and answers that can go more into detail around some aspects which we are covering through this new school for a new city, Syria. So, Evelyn, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Vedran, and thank you for inviting me. I know a little bit Croatia because you know that I was for holidays in July in Croatia, and I had the opportunity to meet the new Green mayor of Zagreb. I think he was there since maybe 3 weeks. So we had their discussion, and I really hope that I can go back once in Croatia also to visit you. So as you said, I'm the co-chair of European Green Party, but here my intervention is more like a former Minister of Environment, but not only environment, I had also environment, it was climate, energy, and also social affairs. And when I say minister, it's because it's the system in Belgium. You know, we have 3 regions, and the region of Brussels is more a city than a region, but institutionally, we call it a region. So I was minister, but during 10 years, so it means it was two mandates. I've been part of government made of 5 ministers from 5 different parties. You have also to know that you know maybe that we speak French and Flemish in Brussels, so there are 3 French-speaking ministers and 2 Flemish ministers. The advantage, and it's really an advantage, and I realize it when I speak with other mayors from different cities in Europe, is that in Belgium, the federal state has given a lot of power to the region, which can make their own legislation. And so we have our legal instruments, we have also our budget and the administration in order to act with efficiency. So that's a very big advantage in comparison with other cities who depend completely also for the regulation, for the rules of the federal level. So that's, of course, our situation was really an advantage for that. And I think also that we did quite well. But I can define that for me, there are some keys for a success. Of course, there the good result during the election also. For me, it was also have also political partners that we are respected from the concurrents, but also that we respect the other parties. And a strong partnership also with NGOs and with the civil society. Also, another key is the question of the communication. Communication, I learned that I have to communicate only when I'm sure that I can realize the project. That's something that I learned. Of course, having a good team and chief cabinet around you, but also be supported by your party and also the MPs or the local councillor that you have around you. And for me, it was also very important to have a relation based on the trust with the administrations. Never be arrogant, but we say often, yes, the politicians, they are coming and going, but the administration, they always stay. So it's very important that I had a good relation with my administration. And another key also is always have in mind that you have to give some solutions, that proposals, also, and a realistic program with an agenda. Alors, for me also, the networks were really a priorities. Different sectors, keeping contacts always with trade unions, with associations, but also with economic sector, making consultations, meetings, going also on in the streets, be empathic also and listen to the citizens. And of course, even every decision, every choice costs money, and money you can spend only once. So you have to define your priorities. Of course, before the election, you have the program, a complete program, but you realize when you come in a government or mayor or vice mayor that you probably don't have the money to to do all your program. So you have to have some priorities and clear priority and communicate about the priorities. And then the question of environment and social justice. Because of course, whenever a green politician becomes mayor, people automatically, they assume that you are going for environment, for energy, for climate. But ecology is also a society vision that goes far beyond just birds and trees. I don't think that using it only that, it's important, but it's more than that. And that we don't just save nature because we love it that much, but we do it because we also like people, and people cannot live without nature. So my green baseline is always fairer, healthier, and more human, green and social. So I tried to make the link, to link the green approach to other domains. And so I create, and that was really a success, but you need probably some years to do that. It was what we called an alliance, work and environment. Because also we know that the improvement on the environment can also create economic opportunities and green jobs. And we did it in different sectors, in 4 sectors, in the sustainable construction, the question of water, the sustainable food, and the question of waste. And so we showed also that ecology and economy form a logical partnership, and we worked also with different economic sectors, but also with schools and high schools for training for the young people. My baseline was a sustainable city, a different type of town is possible. And so to become more sustainable, I developed several lines of action for different sectors and areas. First, I begin with improving significantly the energy efficiency of the buildings by promoting, of course, sustainable renovations and new constructions. Because we were conscious that more than 60% of the CO2 in our city is coming also from the buildings. So it was really a priority to make new big renovations and the construction, and to have a plan, what we call the passive plan, the passive building. But we didn't do only on energy. Because a sustainable city is also built through transversal policies at a neighborhood level. And we initiate what we call sustainable neighborhood contracts to create a new dynamic at a local level for housing, public spaces, and collective infrastructure. And each neighborhood contract was for 4 years, and we received money from Europe through the EFRO program. So I think that we don't have to forget that you can benefit also from subsidies from the European level. Of course, that was the advantage of Brussels, is that we can have it immediately from Europe. We don't have to pass through the national level. Another big topic was, and is always, because you know we have always a green minister here in Brussels, Alain Marron, is the green spaces and the biodiversity. It was a priority and it was very difficult because Brussels is a very high densified city. And so we put a priority on the small green spaces in very dense area, and the integration also of recreation grounds, of playgrounds for children, and also what we call, I initiate a green trail around Brussels in the region, 63 kilometers by walk or bicycle around Brussels. It was not easy to do that and to make the balance between a green city and a city where you have also to build new houses and certainly social houses. So we have always to make the balance between these two functions, and it's not easy. So more and more in Brussels, we try also to, in place of building new houses, is to transform empty offices or old enterprises in social buildings. Of course, with a nice architecture, with green roofs, with green spaces very near the buildings. Of course, we implemented other measures to tackle environmental pollutions, but I don't go in the details, but we worked also on the question of water, because Brussels is also a city with 5 valleys, with high and low neighborhoods. So we had many floods. So we have also to manage the question of water, the air pollution peaks, and also reducing the mountain of waste. But I don't give details on that. Something on our social approach. You have to know that we have about 20% of unemployment and a very high diversified population. So we cannot ignore the social aspect of the sustainable development. So inclusion, participation were and are always at the heart of all public policies. And it's why also we give important energy subsidized to people who need them for renovation or isolation works with very clear criteria. I also wanted to ensure an equitable distribution of these changes and protect the most vulnerable residents. And for this reason, following the example of the social green loan system, there were special measures targeted for a special population. And then another aspect, of course, Brussels is a European capital. We have to play a leading and exemplary role in environmental policies. So I wanted to be involved in international discussions with other European cities through some networks. And I think it's very important to be as a city, and that's a small city as a big city, to be involved in some networks. And there are very interesting networks. So we were in energy cities, in ICLEI, in climate change. So be involved in such networks, you can benefit from other examples of green cities also. That's very interesting. And finally, it's also for that, and then I speak as EGP co-chair, that we create now with EGP a new digital platform for our green mayors, but also vice mayor, but also for local councillor, so that we can show the realizations and exchange on the different experience, because we have more and more cities in Europe, and not only in the north, where we have green mayors. So we have seen in France, of course, 10 big cities, but we can have also in Netherlands, in Germany, but also some in the south. But our priority now also with EGP is to invest more energy in the south and in the east of Europe, on the European level, of course, but also on the local level. So we will organize an event in Valencia in Spain for green cities. It will be probably in April. Because of the COVID, we have to postpone it, but we want to do it physically also. And I want really to say that we are ready to support you if you need more information on, for example, climate plan in cities, mobility plan, or energy plan. So don't hesitate to ask. We can send you some initiative from everywhere in Europe. And so I'm ready to answer to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thanks a lot. We already had one question, although you did mention some of the networks. The question was, what networks would you suggest to be part of concretely? You did mention few like 𝙤𝙬 and climate change, and so
yes,
you can highlight one or two which were most useful or most interesting.
Yes, for me, the most interesting, but I was also vice president of this, was energy cities. It's really very interesting because you have many European cities, but small, bigger. The main office is here in Brussels. They have a very efficient staff, and they work in different language. So if I can, recommend one, is probably energy cities. You can find the link very easily.
Yeah, thank you. We also cooperate with them through some Horizon 2020 projects.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments? You can.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Evelyn. I was particularly interested in the fact that your mandate involved ecology and social affairs, because of course social services can also be green jobs, but the dilemma, I think, is that those who are in poverty are often also in energy poverty, and they find it most difficult to actually transition to cleaner and more efficient energy. And so I wonder if you had solutions to that. You mentioned kind of green loans or grants to particular groups, but I wonder if you could say a bit more. Thanks.
Yes, so we had very interesting incentive, and we put quite a lot of money incentive for some population also, and it worked a lot. It was not only for renovation, not only for big works, it was also for people who want to buy, for example, a fridge with a high energy performance. So it was not only for people who want to renovate all the house. We had different kinds of incentive, and then also, you know, my policy was on three. I always said we have to do three things in parallel: good information, incentive, and regulation, and so legislation. And you have to do the three together. And so we put also a lot of effort in information, and so in NGOs who can inform people who are really, who have other things to do than being involved in green stuff. And we have this population in Brussels. So it was it was also a question of information, of speaking with this population to show also that another energy, they can also spare some money when you use your energy in a different way. So you see, it was not only we give you money and you do your stuff and so and your big renovation. No, it was really more, we were also in the neighborhood. We went there, when I said it was also a day-by-day work with the administration also.
Thank you. We had another one from Tony. Tony?
Thank you, but I think that Paul actually asked really a crucial question for the kind of municipal level of political activity, and I want to develop that question a little bit more. Actually, I want to challenge a bit the presumptions behind that question, because somehow it is easy to simplify that question in a way that most, if not all, environmental transitions will be expensive for the especially low income level households or communities. And I think that is the really important thing to become aware, that there is a really large spectrum of activities in a transition which are now cost effective. I mean, to put a solar on some roof in the city of Zagreb is definitely cost benefit activity. If you switch your drivetrain in your car to electric one, it is something what pays back very well. So as a city, we have a really huge amount of activities which will be economically beneficial for the household or small or medium business in the city. Problem is that those activities are cost ineffective for national government, because tax from the fossil fuel car or from buying electricity from the distribution company are filling government coffers, and they don't like this way of development. But if we make cost-benefit analysis on a city level, we see that both for the community, energy bill is going down, and for the citizen or small business. Challenging is to find a way how to support people to get into those activities. And I apologize that I don't have direct question for our speaker, but actually I'm developing this question from Paul, and I hope this is not inappropriate. Thank you.
It's absolutely not a problem. It's why I began to say when you have environment, and you have always to think on the social question, and it's really important also that you work, but that was interesting that I had energy, environment, and social affairs also, that I was working also with the, we call it Centre Public d'Aide Sociale, social aid administration, we can say that. And they were the real ambassador of our policy, really. They were the ambassador. They can also, because you don't speak to all the population on the same, with the same words. And also we have also different multicultural population in Belgium, in Brussels. You know, we have of course a big Moroccan population, but we have also Polish, enormous, Romania also. So we had also to go to the people, but that was with the social association. But it's really also a question of budget. I agree with that. And it's why I begin to say that we had a chance to be a region and to have also, I don't say all the money, but that we can go also immediately to the European level to ask some money, because we received money from Europe. And that was very interesting. And certainly for what we call the sustainable neighborhood, where we develop not only a question of energy, not only water, but a global concept for a whole neighborhood. But I realize that that's the chance of our institutional situation.
Thank you. I also have one question. You mentioned that you were active in 2 mandates. Can you maybe describe briefly your experience between these 2 mandates? What was different in relation to relationship to administration? If there was any significant change, and also second, was there any difference in your relation to civil society movements and actors around, which are not political actors in narrow sense? Because this mandate you are different than probably in the second mandate. Was there any significant difference there?
Yes, there was a significant difference. Because the experience. Because when I arrived, it was in 2004. It was the first time that in the Brussels, the city of Brussels, they had a green in the government. It was the first time. So at the beginning, it was wow, green. They were a little bit afraid, because, as I say, she will want Greens everywhere. She's not social. Well, a lot of caricature of the Greens at the beginning. Also with my partner. My partner were Socialist Party and Social Democrats. So it's the Catholic Party. So we were three partners. So at the beginning, also for the administration, they were looking to me as a very strange phenomenon, and also I was a woman. I had the chance to be before MP during 10 years also, so they know me, but I realized that going from your program to something more concrete, there is a big difference, of course, because you have an administration who is not always very, very happy to see you, and you have the opposition and so, and you have many problems. And I realized that to make a real change, you need, and I don't want to demotivate people, but I need probably between 3 and 5 years. Because my first year was first, of course, to make my plan, for example, climate plan, and then to contact all the partners also to explain what I wanted to do. And then when I had trust from the partners, from the civil society and so, I can begin something. And so the second mandate after 5 years, because our mandate is 5 years, was really more easy. And I see some results. And so I always say to my friends here, if you can stay for 2 mandates and more, of course, it's better. Because the first mandate, the first 3 years, it's really very difficult. And you don't see the results in the question, certainly, of energy before 3 years. So I needed certainly 1 mandate to have trust, to put the base of my policy, to show some results, concretely some results, and then to continue. So really, the second mandate was really more easy.
Thank you. We had one more question, which is more maybe abstract, but maybe you can give a brief hint on practical suggestions for the city district councillors how to create a change. How to create a change.
How to create the change?
Yeah.
That's really a general and global question. How to create a change is to have also, but it depends, of course, in what kind of system you are. Or you are completely the majority of your majority. That's good. It's not always easy, but that's good. Or you are minority in your majority. And I repeat, you need trust, and you need also, when you do something, to explain it to the people. The communication for me was very important. So when you need budget, but not only budget. If you have budget but no ideas, no program, and if you put budget in some not ecological thing, no, that's not the change that we. And so the combination of having a budget, having some clear priority, you know when you arrive that you will not achieve all your program. That's clear. If you have 2 or 3 big priority and you say, look, I shall do that in mobility, in energy, in sustainable food, and so, and show that you can make the change. For me, that's very important. And then to show also with some very concrete results, how many jobs that you create, maybe how many exemplary buildings that you made, something like that, because the people, they trust in you also when you can show very concrete results. I don't know if because it's a very large question. We can speak also about that.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments? Yes, Ada, please do.
Yeah, so what I'm a bit curious about is how, so when you entered into your office, was that unit established before you? Was it something which had been institutionalized before you entered into office? And there's another question of mine, it might be a bit too complicated to answer probably this time. But what I'm also curious about if Brussels can deal with the agglomeration and the districts. So can you go deep enough and wide enough in order to make that change which is necessary within, for, you know, seeing the change in the city? Because, well, I'm going to be the next speaker, so probably I will touch upon these issues, but we have that problem in Budapest for sure.
Yes, I don't know if I understand well your question. So Brussels is a region with 19 municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, as I say, minister, it's because the region, I was at the level of the region, so above the 19 municipalities. But you have always to deal with the 19s. That's not easy. Each 19 municipality has a council. Some of them, and now we have 14 on the 19, have Greens in their council. That's interesting, of course. But region of Brussels is 1,200,000 inhabitants. So very high densification. I don't know how is Budapest, but maybe it's the same. I don't know.
A bit bigger.
Budapest is bigger.
Yeah, 1.7.
Yes, 1.2. So if I understand your first question, when I arrived, when you are a regional minister, you can come with a staff, with a cabinet, and quite a lot of people. So yes, I came with about 40 persons. Yeah, but it's not only persons on, it's not only experts. You come with a global cabinet also with people who make the translation, who make the administration and so. And you have then your different administration. But this administration, they exist before you and they will exist after you. So it's what I said, that was at the beginning, the most difficult thing to do is to have this good relationship with the administration. Who are not always Greens, of course, and also that they see you coming there as a Green woman. So, but you have to build the trust with them, and it's possible. So that's the structure. Where you, it was your question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope the others also got it.
And I'm very sorry that we
Yes.
were not coming in Budapest 2 weeks ago, because
I know
it was absolute. I wanted absolutely to meet all of you and to see your realizations, and really I was very interested. So I hope I can come to
in March or
Budapest.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would be nice
Thank you.
receiving you.
And come in Brussels, no problem.
We
I
are
can show
preparing
you
to receive you. We were asked to prepare some programs for you. So
we were
time.
so disappointed. You cannot imagine, but that's life.
Okay. At least a short catch-up was possible here. Thank you, Evelyn, for your contribution. It was great to have you with us. To keep up with our timeline, we will now invite Ada to
Thank you. Good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I have to leave you.
Thank you. Ada Ámon is a chief advisor to the mayor of Budapest on climate affairs and the head of the city's newly established climate department. I think that was also sort of background of the question, yeah, earlier question. Tony, I saw your hand a bit too late, or it was from before. No, it was a hand on. Okay, sorry. So Ada, please go ahead with your presentation or your lecture, your contribution. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's nice to see Tony, and hello, Tony. We are old friends. Like decades ago, and anyway, I'm also interested in the experience of Zagreb, but I would like to start with a little contribution on my experiences with the Budapest municipality and the city hall. Where, as it was already mentioned, I was requested to build up a new unit, a new department dealing with climate and environment. Yes, it is a new department in the you know, in an organization which has its own rhythm, structure, and quite, how to say, well-rooted and a bit old style. So 2 years ago, exactly when we started this work, and the new leadership entered this city hall, and but as I was referring to, the old stuff of the city hall remained. So the new leadership wanted to have new program, but we had our own structures and old procedures, which are kind of holding back anything which is new, because as you can imagine, and as Evelyn mentioned, I mean, these new faces are always suspicious, and so we are still dealing with this discomfort, or kind of this problem of institutionalizing and kind of internalizing those concepts and attitudes and kind of way of looking decisions, and trying to make sure that the others understand how and what we would like to achieve, and how we would like to shift these decisions. While at the same time, as you might know, and reading the news, the Budapest leadership and the Budapest mayor is of an opposition, a political, how to say, family than the government in Hungary, and that has an implication on our budget and our way of dealing with issues. So that's also a limitation, which is kind of, you know, pumping up the frustration within the city hall, also from a green perspective. Nevertheless, in the last 2 years, we built up a new department, which is already have a staff of 23, 25 people, which is which I believe is a sizable group of people dealing with complex issues, like sewage system, to, you know, planning a new neighborhood at some point, or kind of developing a new code for building permits for the city, or the developing any neighborhood in the city. So we are trying to do long-term stuff, and at the same time doing the short-term stuff, which is like, in some cases we can stop decisions, we can actually say no and use our power to hold back developments or investments, if it's only on the city hall's how to say, responsibility, or so this is one thing. The other thing is really rather to see the neighborhoods, to see our how to say, radius, the active the how to say,
scope,
the territory, the scope we can influence. And certainly we have companies, we have our own companies in this regard, the public transportation, sewage system, the water management company, district heating, and like the garden management, and all this sort of things, which we are also greening, but it takes time. We have a 5-year program for that. And at the same time, obviously, we need to develop systems which are going to mitigate or have a mitigation impact, like energy efficiency or solar power, or in integrating renewables into public district heating services. And on the other hand, on the adaptation, which is probably a more urgent issue in a city like Budapest, we have to deal with the sewage system, keeping back water, and also dealing with the heat islands in Budapest, which we have a very tiny budget for. And this is also an important thing, that being in the opposition in Hungary creates a tension between, creates a budgetary tension. And I don't want to go into that, but we are not just cut from the European funding schemes, but the central government is withdrawing money from our income in Budapest and in many other cities in Hungary, which is obviously having an impact on our ability to support any green ideas and green initiatives. Nevertheless, we have some quite new ideas in terms of, for example, the solar power integration in Budapest, and I hope that due to our or with the help of our donor from the German government, we will establish a very good system of incentivizing and supporting solar integration in Budapest, as well as enhance the willingness of the inhabitants of Budapest to invest into their rooftop solar systems. I'm sorry. The other, I mean, energy efficiency obviously would be a much better way of dealing with this, but it would require a huge amount of money, which we don't see at the moment. Nevertheless, we are also building up a system in which we can channel a huge amount of money to the households at some point when we will have a chance to do so. And what I would like to also how to say, what I was asking from Evelyn regarding the districts and the agglomeration, there's also a very interesting situation in Budapest, that we have a city government, and it has to deal with 23 different districts in the city, and 70 something small settlements in the agglomeration of Budapest, which is obviously causing a huge tension in the transportation system and how we manage the transportation issues. And there is a tendency at the moment in Budapest of moving out to this suburb area, and then obviously commuting every day in and out, and that inflates the transport hazard on the city with all that problems. And the other thing is that the agglomeration and the outskirts of Budapest is mainly small family houses, inhabited parts and regions and territories, and which sometimes have a tendency of using very strange fuel to heat, especially this time of the year, which causing a huge air quality issue within the city of Budapest, which we also have to deal with. As the environmental department, we are obviously keen on figuring out how to manage things like that and how to make interventions. The sad thing is that the national legislation don't allow really us to do anything meaningful in terms of making the air quality better. We are quite tied. Our hands are quite tied on that issue, and so it's we would need to pump a huge amount of money into that issue of not just teaching people how to heat smartly and cleanly and neatly, but also giving them financial support to do so. So this is also a big issue in our case. Yeah, and as Evelyn said, there is no quick win, as far as I can tell, because first you have to transform the organization, and you have to make sure that the people who you work with the closest, they understand, and the leadership understands how climate on the long run will affect the infrastructure, the public spaces in the city, on one hand. On the other hand, how angry people will be if they don't manage it well. So yeah, I don't know, probably this is for an initial debate kick-off would do.
Thank you very much. I do also have some questions, but I would like to open the floor for questions and comments from participants. Tony?
Thanks, Vedran. Now I have a hand in my hair. Thanks. Hi, Ada. Yes, it's great to see you. And congratulations once again on your new role. You mentioned key things of scope of influence and what is the maneuvering space for the city government, and also, of course, financial resources. And I would like to bring in the topic of national recovery and resilience plans. I think that Zagreb and Budapest are in very similar situation, that actually we have progressive city government and we have national government which really don't want to use those resources for real green transition. Now, luckily, Commission and European institutions have higher than before leverage in influencing implementation of the plans. Now, my opinion is that if each and every city will try to approach Commission and European institutions by itself, it will have effect. But I think that one coordination of 5 or 6 progressive large cities from Central Europe coming jointly to Commission and trying to influence implementation of the plans in their countries could really be tremendously more effective, because Commission will then be faced not just with kind of one case of internal quarrel between in the member state, but with the obvious block of local governments which actually support actual aim of the plans. So how do you see how to set up, and what is the capacity for such a cooperation between Budapest, 2 or 3 other capitals or large cities in Central Europe, and Zagreb?
So there is one already. It exists, the Pact of Free Cities, which was established by the V4 capitals. Because, well, when Mayor Karácsony came into this, I mean, was elected, he was the force in a row in the V4 in the same boots, so to say. Basically, they all of these capital cities are in the same situation, not having the support of the national government, neither politically nor financially. So that was the first thing, and I guess it is open for Zagreb as well. And we also have a representation in Brussels. So the Budapest representation in Brussels is dealing with this issue. And actually we have already in 2019, in December, and ever since we are in discussion with the Commission on that. And we are constantly complaining about the way the Hungarian government is treating Budapest as the largest city, actually the 10th biggest city in the continent, on the continent, and obviously the biggest city in Budapest, and the biggest GDP producer in Hungary, and you know, in 3% of the territory of Hungary, there are 2 million people living. So, so I guess like cutting resources from 17% or so from the population of Hungary is really shouldn't be a political kind of vendetta or something. But I'm not a politician here to say such things. I'm a kind of a, you know, chinovnik here. So, but obviously, I was part of these discussions, as most of the money and the financial support coming from Brussels or from the EU is meant to support the transition which is needed. And anything, any development or any investment which is against or contradicts with the climate goals of the EU should be erased from the plans. So what we are trying to tell to the Commission is that the money and the money or the way the Hungarian government is planning to use all these resources are not the best way of supporting the climate transition or the transition to a climate neutral Europe. So, and back to your question, I agree, but I have seen a lot of letters. I have seen a lot of cities supporting us in this fight, and making sure that the Commission hears our arguments on this issue. But it seems that it wasn't enough. I mean, absurdly, the Hungarian government's very obscure new legislations and plans have made the Commission and the whole European Union much more critical about the Hungarian government's way of, dealing with this issue than the actual plan itself. I mean, the standing plan, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, thank you. We had one more question
On the chat.
in chat. Yeah, what are the measures, for example, you would implement if the state government was on your side? What is the biggest obstacle in that sense?
Well, obviously the money. I mean, for example, I mean, the whole climate strategy, we calculated the needed amount of money for putting in place a 40% cut in the climate in greenhouse gases by 2030, and we calculated it's about 8 billion euros for the city, for the whole city. It includes everything, so it's not all public spending, or not obvious, not necessarily public spending. It's it consists of all the 1,500 megawatt of solar installation. It would require us to upgrade and refurbish 1/3 of the households in Budapest, deep energy efficiency retrofit. It would require us to integrate half of the heat source from renewable into the district heating center system. It would require us to spend more than probably 1.5 billion euros, making the public transportation more comfortable and inviting and appealing to people, in order to change to make the modal split in the transportation and commuting system in Budapest. Obviously, it would require to put money into infrastructure in terms of bike lanes and stuff, but this is a minor amount. So this type, and also greening the whole city, new trees, which is much more complicated in a city than in anywhere else. You need to put much more money into. It requires much more investment. Planting trees in cities. And finally, communication. We need to communicate it with people. We need to get them on our side. To actually, the involvement of the citizens as such is a very important exercise in all of these things, as also Evelyn said. Indeed, I mean, a massive communication campaign is needed really for making sure that people understand where their role is in this whole transition. And then involvement in terms of decision making, like we have organized a lot of we have organized several citizens assembly already, and we are planning further citizen assemblies in order to solve minor issues, like not minor but smaller and more kind of chewable bites, in like transportation, how to deal with transportation, shall we raise the parking free, or just simply don't let certain type of cars into the city? Shall we impose a conjunction charge, or I don't know. So there are so many ways of limiting and trying to limit the transportation means, and especially the car traffic in a city, which is the major source of noise, pollution, keeping public space from other activities. So there are so many externalities of having a car in the city. So how can we monetize it? How can we, there are so many issues to deal with. And as it was also said, it is not just an environmental issue, it is also a social issue. So how can we deal with those people who can't afford a better car, who can't afford a green licensed car? E-mobility is a big issue, obviously, also in Budapest. So we have a lot of ideas what to do. There are two things: the money, which is one important thing, but the other thing is the management skills, the potential of putting projects together, the potential of spending money well. Just, to mention one magic word, procurement is something which everybody hates, but you have to deal with the procurement rules in a city, especially if you have a government with this very nice attitude towards the city.
Thank you. Okay, maybe additional question. While you don't really have support from the state level as explained, I wonder where do you see that you can actually use the potential of the, as you said, the citizen climate assemblies, or a maybe neighborhood and municipal district level? Where do you see that maybe, as it's a kind of green politics, it's also somehow in DNA of the green politics to have a bottom-up approach and not always to expect top-down solutions? So maybe the question goes more in direction how to use this potentially higher popular supports to policies you want to design, and if particularly if you are able to co-create or co-design them with citizens, that can be a really important quality because they also see ownership in this. So I'm just actually, but it's also, I'm aware it's a question of time and capacity to facilitate the whole process, but I would say that it might be an advantage to have city policy co-shaped by the citizens, and that even if you are restricted by the state due to different political reasons, I just wonder if you see that literary change can happen at the low level, municipal, neighborhood, district level, even if it's maybe in the number of emissions, it's still not too high or too ambitious. Do you see there any sort of change coming from this direction?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid question, and both on the district level and also on the city level. We are using it, and if we are using it well, it would prepare the ground for a better, or accepting all those hot issues or new measures, which are not always very close and how to say, nice to people's hearts, like restriction on the cars, the personal car use. Obviously, is one of those hot potatoes nobody would like to touch. No politicians would love to deal with this, and it is a long history in Budapest as well. Probably it's the same in any cities in Europe, though the tendencies in some of the cities are changing and turning back. And when you decide to settle down in Berlin, it wouldn't be your first thought where to park my car, because it wouldn't come to your mind to buy a car and own a car in Berlin. So so really, I guess all these citizen engagement and involvement of the people into, and also the education of real democracy in cities, in polis, is something which we need to broaden, and we have to use it more often when we come to a very contradictory issue. And as far as I can tell, the common sense or the common wisdom, you can see why this citizens' assembly happens, that there is a point when everybody starts to understand the greater common good and would give in their own tiny benefits if he or she sees those greater benefits for the community, so to say. So it was a very interesting experience, but obviously this should be very well prepared and very the protocol kept strictly in order to have a process which is unquestionable, and the result is unquestionable and credible enough for any so the opposite political side wouldn't be able to question your result in with the citizens. So, but it's, I advise everyone to really try this and figure out how to then also implement the proposals what the citizens give, because they are usually quite wise. If you give enough time and enough information to people, they're getting wise. Well, in spite or despite of any propaganda.
Thank you. Do we have more questions or comments? I still have one, maybe related to your specific circumstances that you had to substantially construct or establish the department, the climate department. What was the relationship between, let's say, old and new administration, given the let's say also politically distinctive value of the climate department, which supposedly did not wasn't present before? And what was the biggest challenge in building the department for you personally as a head? Or
Well, there were
maybe it's still not finished. I don't know, but you know, process. Yeah.
Yeah, we are. It's an ongoing process. I guess it will for a while. Obviously, we would, if the environmental issues would be in their own place in the city, there wouldn't be a need for a new department. But obviously, it needs a special care. Where the biggest challenge was, well, as I said, we are part of the coordination of the decisions, so it is a powerful department, a new department with power, which creates obviously enviness in the old fellows. Yes, this is and we are trying to be humble, but at the same time, obviously, it creates tensions in several cases, because in many of these municipalities, it is a very passive, they are in a passive mode, meaning they are not proactive. So paper comes in, processed in the office and in the city hall, and another end of the city hall, another paper drops out and hopefully gets to the citizens or to the client. Now we want to create a much more proactive, pro-citizen, and open office, an open city hall, which is obviously in conflict with the old establishment and the old people or the old colleagues. So, and we have to be very cautious how fast we are doing this, otherwise we are alienate ourselves totally. So this is, but we can decide that we are so fast that they can't keep the pace with us and then just leave. Probably it's not the best way of dealing with issues like that. Yeah, so this is, and the other hard issue or difficult stuff was the salary. In public office, the salaries are very low, but they are very low. So we were bringing in lots of projects and EU funded and other funded projects in order to add on to the already existing salaries or the official how to say regulated salaries. So now we can be closer to the business sector, not close enough, but we're still, if somebody is you know, desperate and committed, would choose us to work with on making a better Budapest. And I think it is one of our achievement that we managed to kind of shift the salaries upwards, which helped me to bring a good group. Otherwise, there would be a huge fluctuation, and I wouldn't be able to keep the quality, which the standard what we put the line.
Thank you. And maybe one more very specific, more institutional question is there any sort of coordination? Maybe you answered that, but a bit more precisely, what is the level of coordination? I see that you have City of Budapest has its own climate department, and you are also main advisor to mayor. But I wonder how other departments are involved, or if they are involved, or are you able to establish sort of coordination with other departments which might be also relevant for the climate issue, indirectly, directly? Sure,
and this is also a new thing.
It's transversal. Yeah.
This is also a new thing, unfortunately, in the city hall, but we are doing a lot of common and involving other departments into our work and trying to get into their procedures and projects, and which is a very good thing. We are quite high in the organigram. The climate department is right under the chief clerk, and there are other clerks, and the climate issue is taken out and put very close to the top management of and the leadership of the city. So hopefully on the longer run we will internalize, and we will manage to be an inevitable part of the decisions on every level and in every sense. And but what I would like even more, if all these departments would have an idea of what an impact of any decision could have on the climate of this city and the environment of this city. So we are working hard on that.
Great. Thank you, Ada. I know you also have other obligations.
Thank you for inviting me, and tell me if tomorrow is the cities with C coming?
Cities
With C. It's Brussels, Budapest, and Bologna.
Yeah. No.
So there must be C's coming tomorrow.
Tomorrow we are more diverse.
Okay.
Yeah, it was by accident, but I also realized, yeah.
Well, thank you for having me, and have a great time.
Thank you, and thank you for joining, and I'm looking forward to the next opportunity between
Me too.
and Budapest, particularly. Yeah. Bye. Okay, we will proceed now, as Ada has announced, with Bologna and maybe a few other Italian cities. We also have a short notice change. Since Christian Iannone was not able to join us, Elena Dirictl will be with us, and she will speak about cases of Bologna and maybe additionally on Naples. In this area, we have different perspectives. Very often we have a political perspectives of the green and left political parties or platforms running the city or have been running the city, but we also have citizen or experts working with the cities on their transformation. And in case of Bologna, it will be more of the case. I also appreciate a lot that Elena was able to, under such a short notice, to accept this new commitment, and I welcome you, Elena. You can also maybe briefly just present in few words yourself and your work since due to this change in the last minute.
Of course, thank you, Vedran. So I'm Elena Dirictl. I am a postdoc research fellow at Georgetown University at the McCourt School of Public Policy. And I worked with Christian Iannone and Sheila Foster, both scholars on the two lawyers. I'm a political scientist by background. And Christian and Sheila have been working for several years on the, contributing to the scholarship on the urban commons and also supporting cities on the ground in the US and in Italy, advising about policies and policy processes for the so-called cities commons or urban commons. I just want to clarify, I do not represent the city of Bologna. The city of Bologna is one of the cities we have been working in with our experimentation as scholars. So I am not in any way representing the city administration of the city of Bologna. And also we have been working there since, so me personally, when I started doing my master's thesis on this and then my PhD in political science, I started working on this applied experimentation that was supporting the policy process that the city of Bologna was conducting in 2014. Well, that started in 2011 and resulted in 2014 in a regulation for governing for the collaboration between citizens and administration to govern urban commons. And then we kept working with the city of Bologna as advisors until 2016. So I've not been working there since 2016, and I'm sure there are amazing and exciting development of the work. So you should reach out to whomever is currently working at the Foundation for Urban Innovation, the Office for Active Citizenship. They're doing an amazing job with neighborhood labs. And here I'm delving into the, to get updated news, you should talk with them. And also it's always more helpful to talk with the city representatives themselves. We scholars just do a very little part of the job. The object of my intervention, and I'll discuss a few case studies, including the ones we're working on right now, so I'm more entitled to speak about them rather than Bologna. Still Italian cities, Reggio Emilia and Naples. The common dimension, the contribution I want to bring it to you, because I believe that Vedran in previous conversations, you already highlighted this as a key dimension, is the level of the neighborhood. So I'm going to start with the conclusion of my speech, which is the dimension of the neighborhood or even smaller blocks and networks at the hyperlocal level, possibly around urban commons, in our experience so far, it's what seems to be working best when trying to trigger commons institutions at the city level, rather than working at the citywide level. Cities are able to scale up to the citywide level, probably after a few years of experimentation and work at the neighborhood level. Now, the city of Bologna, and I'll start with talking about my experience in Bologna. Again, this is not the whole story. So what they did is, in 2014, they approved this regulation for the care and collaboration between citizens and the administration in the care, management, and regeneration of urban commons. Now, this very long title is, so this is a regulation that somehow institutionalized and put into words the work that the city of Bologna was already conducting at the neighborhood level since few years. What they wanted to do, and the reason why they reached out at the time to a civic organization, an NGO, which is called 𝙉𝙚𝙬 𝙬𝙮, I'm not part of 𝙉𝙚𝙬, but I volunteered for them with just writing a few articles at the time. So you should talk with them. The reason why, and Christian was the co-director of the magazine of 𝙉𝙚𝙬, and he worked closely with the city of Bologna, together with the president of 𝙉𝙚𝙬 to do this. So what they were trying to do, this is why they reached out to administrative and public law scholars like Christian, was crystallize in a policy document all the ways to overcome the bottlenecks at the administrative level that would be, hampering somehow the process of collaboration between citizens and the city. So this was the idea. So they carried out a long process, about 2 years and a half, of applied work in 3 neighborhoods. Well, 3 neighborhoods were the ones included in the experimentation. Of course, the city was already working with all the neighborhoods, and they were representatives of different kinds of commons: cultural, gray, so-called, so buildings to be restored and renovated, and green, so like green spaces. They basically tried to create projects, collaborative projects, to collaboratively take care of these assets or even regenerate them in collaboration between citizens and the city. And while doing that, they collected with a sort of journaling all the obstacles that they were encountering, all the positive, the tools and solutions that were already available for the city. And at the end, they put everything together and they created this regulation. So what I want to say, and so what happened after that is that this regulation had, and how can I say, apparently, if one look at it superficially, it looks like a success. We have, I believe, you should go on the 𝙉𝙚𝙬 website, but I believe they have hundreds of cities in Italy that approve this regulation. The problem, so this looks like, wow, that's a success. On my personal research journey, and Christian's, we came to realize that this is not a success. Actually, it's the contrary. The problem, and this is, so talking with other cities, what I would suggest is do not copy and paste the regulation, because what these cities did was copying in most cases. I'm not saying again, and this is where my knowledge stops in 2016. I'm not my knowledge, but I didn't follow the process closely. So they probably updated the working method. But the point is that most of these cities approved this regulation for political opportunism, to say we support the commons just as a label. But if you just take the regulation and approve it without a previous process of experimentation on the ground, nothing happens. What do you think is going to happen? A law doesn't change reality. Citizens, it's not that citizens, city residents, or the cities are not creating urban commons institutions because they don't have a regulation. That's an illusion. So again, My empirical research stopped in 2016, so I'm sure things evolved. But the point is that one first lesson from Bologna is that what was the success of Bologna, it's not the regulation, it's the process they did before and of course afterwards. Then they implemented organizational innovations like the Foundation for Urban Innovation and many other institutional tools that highly facilitated the process, and they made sure that the process was as smoothly went as smoothly as possible. So you should look at the organizational innovations, the policy tools that were created, and not just the policy in itself. Now, other experiences, and they go in the same direction of the neighborhood level, but then with Naples, so we are also going to add something about the replicability. So Reggio Emilia is still in Emilia-Romagna. And it's a city, it's smaller than Bologna, but not that much smaller. And they have been working since more or less 2018 on the on more or less the same progressive journey of the city of Bologna, although of course they are very different cities. Bologna is way more important within Emilia-Romagna because it's different. But the point is that what they did was they started working on the neighborhood level since the very beginning. So this policy is called Neighborhoods as Commons, or the Neighborhood as a Commons, and they basically did more or less the same things: so organizational innovations, process innovations. So they work with neighborhood labs at the neighborhood level, creating projects that would work, very adaptive project, different in every neighborhood. And then what they did, since we started working in Reggio Emilia after the Bologna experience, what we also suggested them to do was to institutionalize something that in Bologna worked very well: the cooperation with the knowledge actors of the city, university, research centers, scholars interested in the process, lawyers or economists or whatever, designers, all the expert knowledge that contributed to the process in Bologna. This is something that cities should institutionalize. This was very important in Bologna. I believe it is very important today. And Reggio Emilia decided to follow this advice, and they created a city science office. Now, this is also a European initiative, and Reggio Emilia is part of it. So at the same time, while we were other researchers that were going in the same direction as we were, got together and invited Reggio Emilia to be part of this city science initiative, which is guided by the Joint Research Center of the European Union. Now, the basic idea is that it's an office within the city where the city hire as civil servants scholars. They might be, university scholars or any other kind of, it's not necessarily linked to the university, and they help the city doing empirically based knowledge, and of course, with highly experimental policies, such as the one on the commons. This is crucial. This is very important, but it's with any kind of very innovative and experimental policy. So for now, we as a research team are we are the first experimentation of the City Science Office in Reggio Emilia. So they will soon hire the city of Reggio Emilia will hire 3 PhD researchers that will be working within the city. So they will write their thesis, and as an experimental process, they will help the city carry out the neighborhood as a commons policies, and they will write their thesis on that instead of inside a windowless room like mine. This is something that I believe would be incredibly important for every city as a something to transfer. Now, in terms of the concrete projects that Bologna and Reggio Emilia did, now up until 2016, the kind of projects that the regulation enabled, recognized somehow, were mostly graffiti removal, citizens keeping green spaces clean, like cleaning the park, doing this kind of thing. And then in the most intense projects, they were also restoring abandoned or dismissed city-owned, and I believe so the regulation also allows privately owned building to be subject to this, but up until 2016, as far as my knowledge goes, there were no privately owned building being restored under the regulation. but I might be wrong about this. So they were all city-owned, but in theory, the regulation allows privately owned as well. Public city-owned buildings to be restored with renovation works and then put into transformed into whatever is needed according to the local needs. So coupled with the neighborhood labs, co-design labs, where residents of the local area are invited to participate and give their ideas and also commit to parts of the project. Now, the problem is money, as you can clearly understand. Where does the money come from? You need money, and you can't use public money. I mean, you can use public money, but then it's subject to the, I mean, at least in Italy, cities are shrinking. They don't have money anymore to take care of basic welfare of their inhabitants. And so it is complicated. The fundraising is very complicated. Now, what Bologna did not explore enough up until 2016, again, I'm sure that things changed, was the co-governance capacity of the regulation. So the regulation in theory allows the project, the Pact of Collaboration, to be signed by a variety of urban actors, including actors that would put their money into it. So like foundations, NGOs, private business, whatever. So, and so this was possible, this was underexplored. Now, there was one pact of collaboration in particular that was actually where a private actor, a foundation, the same that sponsored the research process behind the regulation. So they were a foundation like they care very much. It's the Fondazione del Monte di Bologna Ravenna. They care very much about the future of the city. They believe in social change. So they are kind of an angel investor, if you want to call it like that. So one of the parts of collaboration did have private money, but they came from a years old experiment. When you don't have that, you need to invite private money at the table. So you need to, put a process in place to make these projects attractive for private actors as well. But this is a challenge, okay? Otherwise, it's just the use of public money, and you can't expect local communities, especially in marginalized neighborhood, to be able to put, someone says crowdfunding, okay, but in poor communities, how much crowdfunding how much financial capital are you actually able to mobilize? I don't think a lot. I don't think it's fair to expect from local communities to put in the money with crowdfunding, while it is completely fair to involve them into a project financing guided by social finance principles, of course, with institutional investors like foundations, but also ethical banks. And this way, this would also create jobs and revenues to be distributed to benefit the local communities as well. So this was another aspect that we somehow noticed while evaluating the first years, is that only few of the paths of collaboration of Bologna entailed this dimension of civic entrepreneurship, so of creating economic opportunities for neighborhoods out of the paths of collaboration. If it's just up to residents being proactive and taking care of the city, we don't need a regulation for that, okay? This is not like it's just, how can I say, let's simplify the procedures, let's allow citizens to be able to sign a waiver for responsibility. I'm not going to sue the city if I broke my leg while I clean the park, and that's all you need. If all you want is enabling citizens to be able to clean the park, you only need a waiver or probably an administrative simplification process. That's not the city as a commons. So although of course civic responsibility and duties to contribute, it's clearly a part, I can say it's inherently a part of a city as a commons vision, but that's not a vision. It's part of it. So now going back, and Reggio Emilia entailed this dimension very, very strongly. So to make an example, one of the projects that Reggio Emilia incubated is this Coviolo Wireless. It's basically a wireless community network. I'm sure many of you already heard about them. In one neighborhood, Coviolo, which was where the digital divide was very strong, and it's very hard to get good quality Wi-Fi and broadband access, the community, in collaboration with the city that may acted as an intermediary with the regional network provider, which is a private company, although it works for the region. I don't know what's the legal form is precisely, so I'm gonna ask you for forgiveness in case I'm not precisely correct in saying it's a private company. I'm not sure what's the legal form exactly, but the point is that it's a for-profit company. So they worked together and they created basically a community-owned wireless community network, which provides very affordable, I believe it's 15, 20 euros a month or something like that, internet access in an area where there was no connection at all or very few. And it's managed by the community, this community center. So it's on a volunteering basis, but it's also a source of work, of employment. Now, this model was successful and was exported into 3 other neighborhoods, and now the city is trying to scale it up to the city level. So this would be, when it will come to the city, a clear example of the way that a local neighborhood-based experimentation can finally scale up and start building a small step towards the city as a commons. This is just one of the many elements of the city as a commons. So, of course, as you can clearly imagine, there are regulatory constraints, there are several issues, so it's not that easy. And therefore, constant experimentation is crucial. But this entails a very strong economic empowerment dimension for local communities. So as you can see, this in our, like, if the city as a commons is not coupled with the economic empowerment of local communities, it's not going to work unless it's a very wealthy city with already very strong social capital, you know, then maybe you can talk about pooling resources. But if the city as a commons is in a socio-economic complex context, then you do need to embody a economic empowerment level. Not that economic empowerment solves any conflicts, of course, that's a whole other issue that you should discuss. So the narrative, the political narrative, and so we do believe that the goal of the city as a commons to solve, like to fix capitalism or something like that, it's not the realm of science, it's the realm of politics. So I can't support because it would not belong to my own expertise. So, but if you want to embody from the perspective of politics, it's probably fair to also address all the conflicts behind, like, what does the city as a commons mean for the residents of the city? Because it's not going to be the same for everybody. So it's probably best to address conflicts first and then move to the economic empowerment. Otherwise, who are you going to empower? Only few members of the city. So then, again, this is from my own humble perspective, but it's not my domain. Now, Naples. Naples did a completely different, so while Bologna is probably very top-down in their approach, Naples did a completely different process. They started still in 2011. Well, the policy process started in 2011, but the projects were already there. They did the opposite approach. They enabled, it was very bottom-up, if you want to say, of course, we all hate bottom-up and top-down, but it's a simplification that contains many shadows, but let's use that to be concrete. So they recognized existing forms of informal management of urban assets, in particular buildings and big building complex, as urban commons. So they did the opposite. So they put into place a very complex, I believe it's 10 regulations or something like that, one after the other, some of them at the same time, addressing different parts of the framework. But what they did was establishing a series of principles, both process and also design principles, to recognize existing informal management of the commons, which is a politically correct way to say occupations of city-owned or privately owned buildings, as urban commons. So they recognized 8 urban commons that were already there since years. So it's not that this happened in 2018, in 2011, and they did the regulation a few months after. So they were already. And so what you can find in the policy regulations is this set of principles and process. So it's very complex, but I would say 2 lessons, 2 basic principles. One is that the civil servants from the public administration are constantly involved. They work in these spaces. They go in these spaces and they work on the regulation with the communities. Now, in Naples, this was highly facilitated by the fact that the communities of, in this case, these 8 places are more or less all oriented towards culture, cultural exhibition, arts, urban creativity. The most, the first case, the first urban commons to be recognized, and probably the most beautiful of them in terms of the narrative and the history, is the 𝙎𝙚𝙬 𝙾𝙤. You should look it up. It's an amazing community of artists, and basically they took a place that was not, was used for traditional cultural events, and they turned it really into a cultural commons. Now, the civil servants from the city of Naples, they work directly with the 𝙎𝙬𝙬 𝙾𝙤 community, but the 𝙎𝙬𝙬 𝙾𝙤 community had a lot of people, like, for instance, lawyers working for the community. I mean, they were not being paid, they were volunteer, but the point is that they were lawyers, scholars, and so institutional innovators within the city and community innovators work together to hack the system. That's the point. And so you need to create the conditions for that. And that's why the city science office, unless you already have these, like in Naples, if you already have it, you probably don't need it. But then when you don't have it, create a city science office, and that's what it's supposed to do. So this is one very important point. And the other point is this declaration of civic and collective urban uses. And what the city does is to check, which is basically a self-regulation of the use of the space. And what the city asks of communities is that the use of the space is democratic, inclusive, diversity is promoted. This is, of course, to avoid that the commons become places of segregation, exclusion, and discrimination instead of commons. And then, so this was incredibly interesting for several cities in Europe, and several cities wanted to promote policies on the commons. So this is maybe more interesting for you. So Naples decided to invest in replicability, and they created an 𝙬𝙬 network. So they are right now the leader of this 𝙬𝙬 network. The name is Civic Estate. It just concluded right now. So it was from 2018, I believe, to 2021. Cristian Iaione is lead expert, and Nicola Masella from the city of Naples from the city administration is the project officer. And the other cities in the network are Amsterdam, Barcelona, Gdansk, Ghent, Prešov, and Iași. So of course, as you know, the 𝙬𝙬 approaches geographical diversity. So, and the point is that these cities, this is the other point, replicability. How do you do that? Copy and paste? No, of course. First, you need to work on the process, understand what is the local needs. In Naples was cultural commons because they had these beautiful buildings in the historical center or outside of the historical center. And the local need was cultural services. That's what the city needed, or that's what the activists wanted to do. The artists, the community of artists was probably the most underserved, and so they wanted to put their crafts at the service of the community in this way. In another city, it could be a completely different thing. Parts of collaboration might work in Bologna, it might completely not work in another legal framework. So, to sum up, what the Civic Estate Network worked on for the 3 years was the conditions for transfer and replicability on different levels of preparedness of the city. So you have lighthouse cities, which is mostly Naples and Barcelona, because they have this long tradition of civic collaboration. Then you have mature cities that might have some experimentation in place, but not yet Ghent and Gdansk. So they don't yet have a policy framework, but they do have projects in place. And the communities are there already eager to scale up to the next level. And then learning cities, Prešov and Iași, where they're still dealing with the post-communist culture. So civic collaboration is not necessarily regarded culturally as a value, and also, so there is not always a strong trust. Of course, it changes according, but that's what they communicated in the network. And then it's also the absence of any norm for civic collaboration. So they don't have anything, not even at the constitutional level, to, as a building block to start building the framework. So they still need to build the community and the project. I believe I probably used a big chunk of your time, so I'm just going to shut up.
No, not at all. Do we have any questions or comments? I have one just to maybe kick off the discussion. You did mention some of the concrete projects that were taking place through the neighborhood as a commons, but maybe you can, in just briefly in a few minutes, explain the concept as such, the neighborhood as a common, which is maybe not familiar, or maybe not everyone.
That depends.
Sorry?
That changes. It changes. There are several scholarly definitions of commons.
No, more in the practice, how it...
That's the point. There are several, I can talk for hours about this scholarly definition of the commons, those who say that it's about, there is a triad, resource, community, and governance system. So you have a neighborhood commons when you have an established community with clearly defined borders, a resource with clearly defined borders as well, and a governance system in place. Others that say that the governance system itself is what makes a commons. This is, for instance, the case, I believe they're right, this is, for instance, the case of digital. Well, they define, there is no Wikipedia. Is there a defined community or a defined resource? Probably not. So many others say that, other scholarly traditions say, in the practice, it depends. It depends on the city. A neighborhood commons, a neighborhood as a commons might mean that the critical infrastructures of the neighborhood, like broadband, green spaces, city-owned buildings, and other forms, like I already said, broadband, they are managed as commons, which means that there are commons institutions like foundations or trust, where city and other actors are part of the board, and they collectively own and they take decisions about them and they manage them as well as commons, which means that there is no one single owner and the governance is not public or private, but it is established in the bylaws with certain rules as the common, like I was mentioning the rules in Naples, for instance. Or for instance, what we did was we created in Rome a neighborhood cooperative, which is inspired by commons principles. And one thing that's in the bylaws is that 30% of the revenues from the cooperative, what they do is they organize bike tours in archaeological parks in the city, and 30% of the revenues are reinvested in the neighborhood itself. This could be a role for, you could say that this is the bylaws of a commons institution. Whatever, it changes. It should emerge from a process of co-creation of field. That's my point. It should not be defined by the city. The city can give the political vision. So they can say, look, we have been elected. That's what we want to do in 5 years. But then you need to run a co-creation process at the neighborhood level, probably, or at the city level, digital, in person, however you like it, and define with the people who live in the city what a neighborhood as a commons is. You can't decide it beforehand. You can give some principles, but you can't define it. That's the whole point.
Okay. Maybe other questions or comments? Maybe one more from me then. I wonder if you have any evidence or report on that from your direct involvement or through other sources, how the interaction between neighborhoods / municipal district level of the, let's say, elected representatives, councilors or so, how it does interact with the citizen involvement who are building a sort of, co-building, co-creating different aspects of this public use or respond to the certain needs in the neighborhood. How is there any evolution, or what is the development of this interrelationship between the so to say elected representatives, politically, elected representatives at local neighborhood level, and citizens who are more involved as autonomous subjects?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, there is in the neighborhoods, let's say a certain neighborhood in Bologna or Naples is there, and there is a certain project, there is a certain idea to develop around certain needs, and they are citizens, but they are also elected representatives that represent different political parties or whatsoever, which are involved at certain level of society, local neighborhoods. So do you see any sort of dynamic or interaction evolving between legitimacy of different actors?
You mean if by promoting a city as a commons project, the legitimacy will increase?
Yeah, I mean,
so there is a scholarship.
What is the impact of this?
There is
ownership?
a scholarship about this. I'm not a scholar on this, but there is a whole scholarship about the impact of democratic innovations on the quality of democracy and legitimacy. So you should look at that. It's there is a bunch of people working on this. Tami Pogrinvisky have been studying the impact of democratic innovations in all Latin America. You should look at democratic innovations like city as a commons, participatory budgeting, all of this stuff, and the impact on elected representative in the whole Latin America. You should look at Latino. It's the name of the project. There is a database, it's huge. You should definitely look at that. Then in Germany, you have Brigitte Geissel. She's working on this, I believe, only in German cases, but I'm not sure. It doesn't come to my mind. There is a bunch of people working on this. So I would be dishonest if I tell you something about it. From my own personal experience, I mean, I'm not sure if these scholars established a relationship, like whether democratic innovations like city as a commons policies increase legitimacy, like if after the process people are more happy about their elected representative. I'm not sure they are necessarily. I guess that depends on how the project goes. If the project goes bad, they're probably not happy. I mean, I guess that depends on the neighborhoods. You might have some neighborhoods where you have more, you know, I don't see a case where legitimacy decrease after this process, unless it's a city where no one wants this kind of project. Like if you have neighborhoods where migrants are not well accepted, where people just want the city to take care of the buildings restoration, they might probably not be happy by looking at these kind of projects, I'm guessing. Outside of this case, I don't see how this would decrease the legitimacy, but if the project doesn't go as planned, it might even not be beneficial in terms of the legitimacy, because you might have critical, like city residents who put a lot of time and efforts in the process. Something goes wrong and they blame the politicians. In all the projects I mentioned, Reggio Emilia, Naples, Bologna as well, elected officials are on the forefront of this process. So there is a very strong political willingness to do this, and they don't care about the risks. I guess they don't think about the legitimacy. They just have this vision of the city and they want to make it happen. So they are always at the forefront. The administration can't do much alone, although the goal of this process would be to also overcome political partisanships. And once you create a foundation, once you create a community land trust, is there to stay, hopefully. So I don't think that their main concern is legitimacy, but it might decrease as much as it might increase, I guess.
Okay. Do we have more questions or comments in the meantime? No? Okay. Thank you, Elena, for your presentation. Also, thanks a lot for jumping in a very last moment. We appreciate it. And with this case, we will close today's Syria. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. we will continue with 3 other cities, namely Vienna, Friedrichshafen, and San Francisco, speaking on other municipal policies and ideas being developed as socio-ecological transformation agenda being realized at a local level, where green or green left political options are in charge. Thank you everyone for your attention, for your presence, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with your projects.
Thank you.
Bye.